Hi all, welcome to the channel Cloud Knowledge. Today in this video we'll study another control flow activity that is called as filter activity in Azure Data Factory and Synapse Analytics pipelines. So there is standard documentation by Microsoft for this filter activity in ADF is placed under the Data Factory documentation under the how-to guides inside control flow. So in the previous video, if we see the control flow activities in sequence, we have covered the get metadata activity as the first activity, and expect you go through that activity first and then come to the filter activity to understand this activity in a better way. So what is this filter activity in ADF? We can use this activity in a pipeline to apply filter expression to an input array. So if we have an array coming from the previous activities or in the form of variable, we can apply the filter expression onto that array to get the filtered result. We'll demonstrate this in this video. So the syntax is given here, that we have to give the condition, the items, the name, type. Okay. Then if we go further down, it has the demonstration shown with the help of screenshots. So this is what we are going to see in this video. So let's go to the data factory, and you can see in the data factory, this was the pipeline created for the previous video, the get metadata activity demo pipeline opened here, which was the last video under the control flow activities of Azure Data Factory. So in this video, we'll create a new pipeline demonstrating filter activity. So let's go here in the pipelines and create a new pipeline, and let's name this as pipeline filter activity. And as we have seen in the documentation that it is used to apply a filter expression to an input array, in this demonstration or in this video we'll try to create arrays using parameter, using variables, and taking the output from the get metadata activity. So let's go to the data factory, and here we'll take the filter activity which comes under the iteration and conditionals with the name as filter. So we'll take the filter in the canvas. So in the filter activity, in the general tab, we'll leave the name and description as is. We'll go to the settings tab. So here in the settings tab, we have first the items. If we hover over items, it says input array on which filter should be applied. Then comes the condition to be used for filtering the input. And the input array we have not supplied here directly, or there is no activity before the filter activity from which the input is coming here, right? We have taken standalone filter activity directly into this pipeline, right? So we have to supply the array as input to this filter activity. So in order to supply it, we'll click on the blank space present in the pipeline, not on the filter activity, so that it will show us the four options: parameters, variables, settings, and output. And we will first use the variables section here, and we'll create the variables. We'll click on plus new, and we'll provide the name of the input array. Let's take it as departments, and it should be of type array. So in the type column, we'll select the type as array, and the default value, the array value, has to be enclosed inside the square braces. So we'll take square brackets and then the values to be in double quotes. So let's take the first department as IT, comma, the second department is HR, third department as sales, and let's take the last department as consulting. Okay. So we have given the default value, that is the array values for the departments. Okay. So this we have given in the filter activity under the variable section. And if we click on now to the filter activity and to the settings, called items, we have supplied the input array on which the filter has to be applied, right? So once we click on the item section and try to add the dynamic content here, upon opening this page, that is the pipeline expression builder, again we have the 4 options, and since we have given variables, in the variables we have provided the input array, we'll click on variables that is present at the last, and we'll click on department. Click to insert expression. So click on department. So what happens is that from the pipeline variables, it will take the departments variable which we have defined as an array, right? So we'll click on that and click OK. So the items we have supplied to this filter activity. Next is the condition. The condition to be used for filtering the input. So let's say, so here in the variables we have the departments IT, HR, sales and consulting, and let's say in the output we want to process only HR. Okay, so in the condition we can give here, let's say we have different functions here. Okay, so we'll go to the functions in the pipeline expression builder. We'll go to the different functions which are present, and we can go to the collection function, returns true. And in the collection function we have contains. It returns true if dictionary contains a key, list contains value, or string contains a substring. Okay, so let's say we'll click on contains and we'll take the input value which is coming from the filter items, that is the input array, that is the current item. Okay, and if this contains HR, so we'll give HR, then filter out those values. Okay, so contains in the item if the value is present as HR. So if we go to the collection function contains, it says returns true if the dictionary contains a key, list contains a value, or string contains a substring. Okay, so inside the item, that is the current item or the array of values which are coming as input, if within those values HR is the value, search for that value and filter that out for us. So this is what we have given, and this is how we completed the items and the conditions in the settings of the filter activity. So let's now validate this filter activity and perform a debug run to see what output it is giving to us. So let's wait for the filter activity to complete. It's completed. So we can see here in the input, it is taking up the array, that is the items and conditions which we have given, and in the output we have the items count as 4, that is the department was having 4 values in the array, and the filtered out items count is 1, that is the value is HR, because we have applied the expression contains. The input coming from the filter activity array of values, filter out only HR. So the output given is only HR. Filtered items count is HR, right? So this is how we filtered from the input variables, that is the department's array, only HR for us. Okay, this we have done through variables. So the second way is we can create parameters also. Okay, so let's go here to the parameters section. So in the parameters section, we'll click on plus new and create parameter. So let's say we have created a parameter for the numbers, and here in the default value we'll provide the numbers. So within these square brackets we'll provide 1, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we have provided the default value to this parameter named as numbers, and now for this parameters we'll take another filter activity in the canvas. Okay, and since the parameter is defined at the pipeline level, we'll click on the filter activity 2 which we have taken in the canvas, and we'll name, let's say, this filter activity filter with parameters, and the first one was based on the variables, so we'll name it as variables, and we'll go to the parameters one, and in the settings we'll go, and in the settings we have to again give the input array in the items. So we'll click on add dynamic content to it, and the very first option given under the parameters section is numbers. So we'll click on this. So it will give us pipeline parameters dot numbers. We have selected the pipeline parameters which we have defined as numbers. Okay. And here if we go, it gives us a warning that expression of type string does not match the field items, expected type is array. So what mistake we did is because here while defining the parameters we have not selected the type as array, right? So for the filter activity we have to supply arrays and the default value we have given as array. So we'll go back here and now I think the warning will be gone. Okay, so that's gone and now we have to provide the condition, right? So we'll go to the condition and add dynamic content, and here this time let's say we have given the parameter value from 1 to 6, okay, the numbers, and we'll only consider, let's say, values which are greater than 3. So here if we go in the collection functions, we have not in the collection functions, I think the function is in logical, where we have a function called as greater. Okay, it returns true if the first argument is greater than the second. So let's take this greater function, click on it, and take the first argument as the filter parameter, that is the current item coming from the filter parameters, and the second argument if the first item is greater than 3. Okay, so we have given that the parameter array which is coming from the pipeline, if the values are greater than 3, then filter those out for us. We'll click on OK. We'll try to validate the mapping and perform a debug run. And once we click on debug, it will show us if you want to change the values at the runtime. Okay, so let the values be from 1 to 6 and we'll see the results. So click OK and let's wait for the execution to complete. So the execution completed. So we'll see for the filter parameters we have given the items and the conditions, and in the output of the filter activity items count was 6, right? There were 6 numbers and the filtered item count is 3. That is, we have given the greater function which will give you the numbers which are greater than 3. So it is 4, 5, 6 and the count is 3, 4, 5, 6. That count we have got. So this is how filter activity is used when we have supplied the array of values in the form of variables or parameters. Now let's take another example where we'll have the get metadata activity, okay, and the output from the get metadata activity will try to filter. Okay, so here in the main pipeline you can see that for this pipeline of the get metadata activity, what we did is we connected to a folder. In the settings if we go, we connected to a folder and got the field list arguments here, and then in the other one we connected to the folder and inside that folder we connected to a file and enabled the arguments. Now we'll apply the filter activity over these file and folder get metadata activity outputs. Okay, so let's now first execute this pipeline of the get metadata activity to see what the output is for this. So both the activities completed, and if you remember the previous video, for the get metadata of the file we have enabled the different field list arguments and we are getting this value for the students.csv file, which is having 2 columns, okay, the column count, size, etc. it has given, and for the folder location it has given child items and the other details of this folder, okay, the test input folder. So in the first case, let's first apply the filter activity to the get metadata of the folder. So in this example you can see that in the get metadata activity for this folder level we have got the different files and folders. It has given in the child items the different types of files and folders which were present at the test input folder, right? It had 2 folders and different files. So let's say through filter activity we want to filter out only the files which are CSVs, okay, with the .csv extension. So what we will do is that we'll take a filter activity in the canvas. From the iteration and conditionals, take the filter activity and we'll connect the get metadata folder activity to this filter activity, and we'll go to the filter activity here and we'll go to the settings. So in the settings, we have to give the input array on which the filter should be applied. Okay, so we'll click on the dynamic content and it should be the output which is coming from the get metadata folder. And from the get metadata folder, we want the child items. That is the list of the subfolders in the files in the given folder. Why we are selecting the get metadata folder output child items is that if you go here back to the output which is coming from the get metadata activity, under the child items we have the different files and folders. And now to those child items name field we have to apply the filter condition, right? That's why we have given the items up to the child items of the get metadata activity. Okay, so we have given the items. Next is to apply the condition to be used for filtering the input. Now we are up to the level of child items, and now we have to apply the condition over it. So in our case, we want to only take the files which are having CSV extension, which contains CSV rather. So we'll go to the functions, and inside the collection function, as we did in the previous filter activity, we'll take the contains function. Okay, and we know what contains will do is that from the input it will search for the value which will give in the second argument. So we have taken the function contains, and now we have to give the first argument. The first argument will be the current item from filter 1. So we'll click on item, and this time it will not just be the item like we did for the normal filter activity where we supplied the pipeline parameters and variables. It will have item dot name. Okay, and comma, the second argument will be, let's say we wanted only the CSVs, so we'll write CSV. If the item dot name contains CSV, we will mark it as true, or we will filter it out. So click OK. Now why we gave here item dot name is the question. So if we go here to the execution of the get metadata folder and to the output of it, we know that we are up to the child items level. Okay, we have given here in the filter activity the items as get metadata folder output dot child items. So child items is the array, right? Child items is the array, and inside this array we have two elements, right? It is not just a single element, it is two element, that is name as well as type. So if we have to search in the name element the CSV, so we have to give the item which will take us to this child items array, and inside that array the element name. Okay, if let's say we have a condition in the filter activity that we want to filter out only the child items type as folder, because here inside this child items we have different files as well as folder, then we will give item dot type. Okay, the element type. Okay, so let's try to execute this filter activity and see the output first. Let's see, debug it. So the filter one executed, and if we go to the input to it, we have given the items and the conditions, and in the output if we go, the items count is 18, filtered item count is 11. Okay, because the value will give us only the CSVs. If we maximize it, we'll see that we applied the condition contains item dot name and CSVs. So it has C in the output given only the CSVs, right? So this is how we filtered the CSVs from the child items, that is the folder location files and folders which are present there. Now let's say what I said is that from this location, that is the test input location, we want to only filter out these folders. We are not interested to get these files, only these two folders we want to filter out. So what happens is that get metadata folder output is having here under the child items two elements, name and type. Okay, and for the folder type we have the type as type is equals to folder here as well as here. So what we'll give in the filter activity is that we'll go back to the condition here and we'll give item dot type if it is folder. Okay, so if the item.type contains folder, then filter that out for me. Click OK and perform a debug run. So it completed, and we'll go to the output and maximize it. So it has given us item count 2, where it has given us input files, JSON input, both of type folder. So this is how from this test input location we have filtered out only the folders with the help of filter activity. So this we have done for the folder level. Now we have a get metadata activity which is connected to a file. Okay, if we open this data set, it is test input and students.csv file. And if we try to open the students.csv file here and see the contents of it, it has two columns, student ID and total marks. Okay, and if we see the execution of this get metadata file, it has given us the details of this file. The content MD5, item name, item type, last modified, size of this file, structure, column count, etc. Okay, so all these arguments we have enabled at the get metadata activity level. That's why these details are given. So let's say in our requirement, with the help of filter activity, we want to only get one column that is called as student ID in the output. We are not interested to get the total marks column. And we know that the student ID column, that is the column level details, are given under the structure array. So we will use the structure array. So let's take another filter activity in the canvas and connect it to the get metadata of the file. And let's go to the filter activity 2, and to the settings we will first give the input array to it, and this time the input array will be get metadata of file, and it should be given as the structure, data structure of the file or relational database table. Why we are selecting the structure? Because we want to filter on the column. Okay, the structure is having the column for us, as we have seen at this level. The structure is having the name and the type, and we are only interested to get the name, the student ID. So we have selected it, and now we'll go back here, and in the condition we will give the same function we will use from the collections, that is contains, and we'll give here the current item. The current item, we are inside the structure array, and in the structure array we want to give the name. Okay, and it should contain the value student ID. Okay, why we have given item.name and student ID? Because here we have seen that inside the structure array we have name and type. So in order to distinguish which element to refer, we have given name, and our column student ID is referenced by name. So we have given name here. If it contains student ID in the item.name, then filter that out for me. So we'll perform a debug run and wait for the completion. Yeah, so filter 2 also finished. Let's see the filter 2 output. If we maximize the output, it has given us items count and the filtered item count. In the filtered item count, it has given us the value as name, student ID and type string. This is what we would try to filter from the file. That is the get metadata file output. We have tried to filter out only one column, student ID, and this is what we have got in the result. So this is how we can use filter activity to filter out using the expressions in different ways. So I've shown you the filter activity to filter the variable input, the parameter input, and then to the get metadata activity, folder input, and the file input. Okay, so I hope you have understood the filter activity usage in ADF, and if you have any queries, do let me know in comments. Thank you. Happy learning. Bye.